The day my best friend revealed her true, selfish colors. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. As I sat on the curb with my eviction notice, my best friend of 10 years sighed into the phone and said, "Can we do this later? I'm at the spa. You're kind of ruining my vibe right now." That was it. 10 years of fierce loyalty, endless late nights, thousands of hours of unpaid labor building her brand from scratch, and my entire world was collapsing. And she was annoyed that my tears were interrupting her hot stone massage. I'm Chloe. I'm 28, and for the last decade, I have been the invisible scaffolding holding up the glittering, glamorous life of my best friend, Sienna. I'm a graphic designer, a copywriter, a crisis manager, and a chronic people pleaser. If Sienna needed a sleek website built overnight, I brewed the coffee and coded until dawn. If she needed a persuasive pitch deck for a new investor, I wrote every single word and formatted every slide. My own portfolio was a dusty afterthought. I truly believed in her. I thought we were a team. I thought that when she finally made it big, she'd reach back and pull me up with her. That's the lie I told myself every time I paid for our shared software subscriptions out of my pocket while she bought designer handbags. Have you ever looked at someone you loved and suddenly realized you were looking at a complete stranger? The eviction notice crumpled in my fist was printed on cheap, glaring pink paper. 30 days to vacate my cramped studio apartment. My banking app showed a pathetic balance of exactly $42.16. A sudden, terrifying medical emergency with my mom had completely wiped out my meager savings over the last month. I had given absolutely everything to Sienna's upcoming luxury lifestyle brand launch, working grueling 90-hour weeks for free because she promised me a massive equity payout once Julian, her wealthy new investor, officially signed the final papers. She told me we were in this together. But sitting there on that dirty urban curb, shivering in the crisp October wind, while she complained about the resort's ambient music being too loud to hear my sobbing, the thick mental fog finally began to lift. I wasn't her business partner. I wasn't even her friend. I was just her host. And this beautiful, magnetic parasite was finally done feeding on me. I wiped my tears and realized my nightmare was only just beginning. To understand how I ended up on that curb, you have to understand the illusion of our friendship. Sienna and I met in college design school. She was a localized hurricane of charisma, gorgeous, wildly confident, and entirely incapable of passing color theory on her own. I was the quiet scholarship kid who actually knew how to use Adobe Illustrator. She latched onto me immediately. "We're going to rule the world, Chloe," she used to say, dragging me to VIP parties where I'd hold her coat while she networked. I convinced myself I preferred the background. It was safer there. I didn't have to worry about the spotlight burning me. Our dynamic solidified over the next 10 years. Sienna played the dazzling visionary star, and I played the exhausted stagehand pulling the ropes to make her fly. When she landed a junior art director job she was wildly unqualified for, I spent my weekends ghost designing her assignments so she wouldn't get fired. She rewarded me with lavish dinners and intoxicating praise. "I couldn't survive without you," she'd gush, pouring me expensive wine. It felt like love. It felt like being chosen by the prom queen. But it was just a transaction where I paid all the costs. Just 3 weeks before my eviction, she called me in a blind panic at 2 in the morning. Julian, the venture capitalist who was considering funding her new lifestyle wellness brand, Aura by Sienna, wanted to see a full interactive web prototype by 8 a.m. Sienna hadn't even started it. "Chloe, please, he's going to walk away," she sobbed hysterically. "If I lose this, I have nothing. I'll give you 20% of the company, I swear. Just save me." So, I made a pot of black coffee. I sat at my cramped desk in my tiny studio apartment, and I built an entire interactive prototype from scratch in 6 hours. I poured my soul into the typography, the user interface, the brand voice. At 7:45 a.m., I emailed her the link. She texted back a string of heart emojis. "No, thank you. Just emojis." Later that day, she posted a selfie from a rooftop bar, holding a champagne flute. The caption read, "Hard work pays off. Just crushed my biggest pitch yet. #girlboss, #selfmade." I liked the post. I always liked the post. I was too blind to see how she was methodically erasing my existence from her success. But a much darker truth was waiting for me inside her files. Aura by Sienna wasn't just a small startup. It was poised to be a massive, multi-million-dollar creative launch. Julian was putting up serious capital, and the expectations were incredibly high. For the past 6 months, my life hadn't been my own. I was operating on 3 hours of sleep a night, living off cheap ramen and instant coffee, while Sienna occupied her immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windowed luxury penthouse across town. My cramped, messy studio had become a sweatshop for her dreams. I wasn't just building the website anymore. I was writing every single word of her investor pitches, designing the packaging for her overpriced skincare line, and managing her social media grid. I even crafted the personal origin story she told Julian to secure his initial interest. It was exhausting, bone-deep labor. Every time I brought up formalizing our agreement or getting a small stipend to cover my basic living expenses, Sienna would expertly deflect. "Chloe, babe, you know all the money is tied up in legal escrow right now," she'd say, looking at me with wide, innocent eyes. "As soon as the launch party happens next month and Julian releases the operational funds, you are getting a massive back pay check. We're going to be rich. You just have to hold on a little longer." I believed her. I wanted to believe her so badly. Text message from Sienna, August 14th, 11:23 p.m. Need those revised packaging mock-ups by tomorrow morning. Julian is breathing down my neck. Love you so much for doing this. Text message from Chloe, August 15th, 4 a.m. Just sent them over. I'm really struggling with rent this month. See, can we talk about an advance? Text message from Sienna, August 16th, 2:15 p.m. OMG, sorry, just saw this. So swamped. Let's talk after my facial. We never talked about it. I just kept my head down and worked harder, convincing myself that the light at the end of the tunnel was real. I sacrificed my own freelance clients, my social life, and my mental health to ensure her launch was completely flawless. I thought my sacrifice was an investment in our shared future. I was practically doing 90% of the actual work for this company while she shopped for launch party outfits. I thought she valued me. I was about to find out exactly how little my life mattered. The crash happened on a Tuesday. I had spent the entire weekend at the hospital back in my hometown because my mother had suffered a severe stroke. It was a terrifying, chaotic blur of doctors, beeping machines, and agonizing decisions. My mom is a retired public school teacher with terrible insurance, and the out-of-pocket costs for her emergency care and stabilization were astronomical. I drained my already pathetic savings account to cover her immediate medical bills and keep her comfortable. By the time I finally took a train back to the city, I was a hollowed-out, exhausted shell of a human being. I arrived at my apartment building, dragging my feet up the 3 flights of stairs, only to find a bright pink piece of paper taped aggressively to my front door. It was a formal eviction notice. My landlord had run out of patience. I had 30 days to vacate, or the sheriff would be called to physically remove me and my belongings. I stood there staring at it, the letters blurring together as a cold sweat broke out over my entire body. I checked my banking app again, praying for a miracle. $42.16. That was my total net worth after 10 years of working my fingers to the bone. Panic, thick and suffocating, closed around my throat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process it. My mom was fighting for her life. I was about to be homeless, and I had absolutely nowhere else to turn. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person I thought I could count on. I dialed Sienna. She didn't answer. I called again, sent straight to voicemail. I texted her, "Sienna, please pick up. It's an absolute emergency. I'm getting evicted and my mom is in the hospital. I need help." I sat on the dirty curb outside my building, hugging my knees to my chest, staring at the screen, waiting for the 3 little typing dots to appear. I waited for my best friend to rush to my side, just like I had done for her 1,000 times before. Time dragged on. 20 minutes. An hour. 2 hours. The sun started to set, casting long, dark shadows over the concrete. My hands shook as I gripped the phone, desperately whispering her name. Finally, my phone buzzed with an incoming call that broke my heart. "Sienna? Oh my God, Sienna. Thank you for calling back." I gasped into the receiver, tears instantly spilling down my cheeks. "I'm so scared. I got an eviction notice and my mom." "Chloe, breathe, okay? You're being really loud." Sienna's voice floated through the speaker, crisp and entirely unbothered. In the background, I could hear the faint, soothing sounds of a bamboo water fountain, and soft acoustic music. "Where are you?" I choked out, confusion cutting through my panic. "I'm at the Sedona retreat, remember? Julian gifted me a 4-day spa getaway to decompress before the big launch next week," she said, sounding mildly annoyed. "I stepped out of my hot stone massage because you called 6 times. Is the website down or something?" I stared at the concrete sidewalk, my brain struggling to process her words. "No, Sienna. I'm getting evicted. My mom had a stroke. I have $40 to my name. I need that back pay. Even just a little bit of it. Just to pay my landlord so I don't end up on the street." There was a long, excruciating pause on the line. When she finally spoke, her tone was icy and dripping with condescension. "Chloe, seriously? You're doing this right now? I told you, the funds are locked up until after the launch. I can't just magically make money appear." "But Julian is an investor, not a charity," she snapped. "Look, this is really bad timing. You're kind of ruining my vibe right now, and I need to be in a perfect headspace for next week. You need to figure your own stuff out and stop projecting your chaotic energy onto me. I have to go back inside." "Sienna, please don't hang up," I begged, entirely abandoning my pride. "I have nowhere else to go. Just meditate on it. Talk to you Monday," she replied. Click. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone from my ear. The silence of the city street suddenly felt deafening. The illusion completely shattered in that exact second. 10 years of friendship dissolved into nothing but ash. I wasn't a person to her. I was an appliance. And right now, I was just a broken appliance ruining her luxury vacation. I was completely, utterly alone. I dragged myself upstairs, completely unaware that salvation would come knocking soon. The next 2 days were a blur of numb survival. I packed my meager belongings into cardboard boxes I begged from the local grocery store, crying until my eyes were swollen shut. On Thursday evening, there was a soft knock on my door. It was Marcus. Marcus is a mutual friend, a sharp, observant guy who had always been a part of our broader social circle. He was one of the few people who never seemed fully hypnotized by Sienna's gravitational pull. "Hey," he said gently, taking in the chaotic state of my apartment and my exhausted, tear-stained face. "I heard about your mom from your sister. I brought some Thai food. Are you okay?" I let him in, and for the first time in days, I actually ate a warm meal. I broke down and told him everything. The stroke, the eviction, the absolute zero in my bank account, and the cold, dismissive phone call from Sienna at the spa. Marcus stopped chewing, his chopsticks hovering in midair. His expression morphed from sympathetic to deeply confused, and then to a rigid anger. "Wait a minute," Marcus said slowly, setting his food down. "What do you mean? You have $0. What do you mean you're waiting on back pay?" "Sienna said the funds are locked in escrow until after the launch party," I mumbled, wiping my nose. Marcus stared at me, his jaw clenching tightly. "Chloe, I was having drinks with Julian and Sienna 3 weeks ago. Julian authorized an $80,000 operational advance specifically to cover contractor fees and design assets. Sienna told us she paid you a massive retainer. She bragged about how generously she takes care of her team." The room started to spin. She what?" I whispered. "She told us she cut you a check for 25 grand. Marcus said quietly. "Where did that money go, Chloe?" My heart slammed against my ribs. $80,000. 25 grand. I hadn't seen a single dime. Have you ever felt the ground completely vanish beneath your feet? The profound grief of being abandoned suddenly mutated into a sharp, icy spike of suspicion. Sienna hadn't just been ignoring my crisis. She had been actively lying to everyone about my compensation. I needed to see exactly what she was hiding on her computer. The following morning, driven by a desperate need to make some quick cash to secure a cheap rental, I reached out to a former freelance client. They needed a rush job on a logo update, but I needed access to a specific font file we had used a year ago. The only place it existed was in the massive, shared cloud drive Sienna and I used for all her Aura brand assets. I logged in, my hands trembling slightly as I navigated through the familiar labyrinth of folders I had meticulously organized for her. I found the font file easily enough, but as I was backing out of the directory, my cursor hovered over a strangely named folder sitting at the very bottom of the drive. It was titled archive_personal__NC. I had never seen it before. My pulse quickened. The icy suspicion Marcus had planted in my chest began to bloom into full-blown dread. I double-clicked the folder. It was heavily nested. I clicked through layer after layer, references, mood boards, finals, until I finally hit the core documents. It was a gold mine of digital paperwork, but none of it looked right. I opened a PDF titled Orang_Brand_Identity_Invoice. PDF. It was a fake invoice, generated to look like it came from a high-end, fictitious design agency in London, billing Julian's investment firm for $50,000 for the exact brand identity work I had done for free. The payment details routed to an LLC I vaguely recognized as belonging to Sienna's cousin. I opened another document. It was an email export, a thread between Sienna and Julian from 4 months ago. Julian, I love the new website mockups. Who is your developer? They are incredibly talented. Sienna, thank you. I actually built it myself over the weekend. Taught myself some basic coding to save us capital. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. She hadn't just stiffed me on the money. She was systematically erasing my existence and claiming my thousands of hours of highly skilled labor as her own girl-boss genius to secure millions in funding. The timestamps on the fake agency invoices matched the exact days she had demanded rush work from me. My shaking hand clicked on one last folder labeled with my name. The folder was simply labeled Chloe_Assets. My breath hitched in my throat as I opened it. Inside were hundreds of high-resolution files. But they weren't for Aura. They were my personal, independent portfolio pieces. Pieces I had designed years ago. Pieces I was deeply proud of. I opened a subfolder named Investor_Deck_V3. It was the pitch deck Sienna had been circulating to Julian and other venture capitalists to secure her massive multi-million-dollar valuation. I scrolled to the section titled Founder's Creative Vision. There, beautifully formatted and presented entirely as Sienna's own past work, was my entire professional portfolio. My award-winning packaging design from 2021. My rebranding project for a local nonprofit. She had meticulously cropped out my watermarks and replaced them with her own subtle initials. The magnitude of the theft was breathtaking. But the true horror was waiting in a document titled Reference_Checks. Docs. It was a log of phone calls. For the last 2 years, I had been applying for senior design positions at top-tier agencies. I would always make it to the final round, and then, inexplicably, I would get a polite rejection email. I had listed Sienna as a professional reference, trusting her to vouch for my character. The document contained her handwritten notes from those reference calls. May 12th, Leo Burnett Agency. Told them Chloe is talented but highly unreliable and struggles with deadlines. August 3rd, Pentagram. Mentioned Chloe has a tendency to take credit for team projects. Advised caution. She hadn't just stolen my work to build her empire. She had actively, maliciously sabotaged my career to keep me trapped, desperate, and entirely dependent on her. She needed her invisible, free labor force to remain broken and compliant. I wasn't just betrayed. I had been financially and professionally assassinated by the person I trusted most in the world. I sat in my empty, boxed-up apartment and let out a scream that tore my throat raw. The blinding grief vanished, replaced by a dark, absolute, and freezing rage. I didn't sleep that night. The tears had completely stopped, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity I had never experienced before. I sat at my laptop, fueled by bitter adrenaline, and began the meticulous process of digital exfiltration. I downloaded absolutely everything. The fake invoices routing money to her cousin, the altered portfolio files with my stolen work, the sabotaging reference notes that ruined my career, and the damning email exports where she blatantly lied to Julian. I organized it all into a highly secure, encrypted drive and made 3 separate physical backups. Next, I gathered the undeniable proof of my creation. The raw Adobe files with original, unalterable metadata intact, proving creation dates months before Sienna even registered her company. I had the ultimate smoking gun. But now I faced a grueling moral dilemma. Do I confront her privately? Do I send a legal letter, demand my stolen $25,000, and just walk away quietly into the night? That is exactly what the old Chloe would have done. The chronic people-pleaser who hated making a scene. But the old Chloe died on that dirty curb with an eviction notice in her hand. If I confronted her privately, Sienna would easily twist it. She would gaslight me, play the tearful victim, or use Julian's massive legal team to bury me in paperwork until I was destroyed. She was a master manipulator who entirely controlled the narrative. No, quiet wasn't going to work. Taking back what was mine required exposing the fraud where she couldn't possibly hide from it. I needed to detonate her meticulously crafted facade in a setting where she couldn't spin the truth. The lavish launch party for Aura was in exactly 4 days. 300 of the city's elite, industry influencers, and key investors, including Julian, were scheduled to attend. I was officially the technical director for the event, completely in charge of the massive digital displays and the presentation. I wiped my hard drive clean and began to build my masterpiece. Sienna returned from her luxury spa trip on Monday, practically glowing with aggressive serenity. I was sitting amidst the packed cardboard boxes in my apartment when she used her spare key to waltz right in. She was holding an iced matcha latte and a small, brightly colored paper bag. "Hey babe," she chirped, completely ignoring the depressing reality of my half-empty apartment. "I brought you a little something from Sedona to help cleanse your aura." She placed the bag on my desk. Inside was a generic $10 sage smudge stick. $10. That was her compensation for my 10 years of loyalty and my current homelessness. "Thanks," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat and devoid of emotion. I didn't look up from my laptop. She sighed dramatically, crossing her arms and leaning against the doorframe. "Look, Chloe, I know you were super stressed the other day, but you really need to work on your emotional regulation. Your bad attitude is starting to affect my energy, and I need absolute positivity for the launch on Friday. Julian is bringing 3 major retail buyers." "I'm fine, Sienna. Just focused on getting the presentation deck perfectly finalized for you," I replied smoothly, suppressing the urge to vomit. She smiled, visibly relieved that I was falling back into my obedient, submissive role. "Good. I knew you'd snap out of it. You always do. We're a team, right? Just get through Friday, and I promise I'll talk to Julian about getting you a little bonus for your trouble." A little bonus. Not the $25,000 she already stole. Not the equity she promised. A little bonus. Text message from Marcus, 2:15 p.m. "You okay? Did she show up?" Text message from Chloe, 2:16 p.m. "She brought me a stick of sage. The plan is officially a go." I forced myself to look her dead in the eyes and smile. It was the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my entire life. "Absolutely, Sienna. Friday is going to be a night that nobody in this city will ever forget." She hugged me tightly, completely unaware she was embracing her own executioner. Friday evening arrived, dripping in manufactured opulence. The venue was a stunning, converted warehouse in the Arts District, draped in ethereal white silk and illuminated by hundreds of floating candles. Waiters circulated with silver trays of champagne, and a string quartet played modern pop covers in the corner. It was a breathtaking testament to my design vision, entirely funded by Julian's money and falsely credited to Sienna's genius. I was stationed in the elevated tech booth at the back of the room, hidden entirely in the shadows. Before me was a massive soundboard and the master laptop connected to the 30-foot LED wall dominating the main stage. I felt a bizarre, icy calm wash over me. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I texted Marcus, who had just arrived at the front door. "Chloe, make sure you stand near the front. And keep an eye on Julian." "Marcus, I'm right behind him. He's practically beaming. You sure about this?" "Chloe, never been more sure of anything in my life." I watched through the glass partition as Sienna floated through the crowded room, wearing a custom designer gown that easily cost more than my entire year's rent. She was laughing vibrantly, tossing her perfectly styled hair, and accepting endless compliments from industry heavyweights. Julian stood proudly by her side, introducing her to the major retail buyers she had mentioned. He looked completely enamored with his brilliant, young, self-made founder. The clock struck 8. It was time for the keynote presentation. The house lights smoothly dimmed to a dramatic, moody purple. A hush fell over the 300 guests as a single spotlight illuminated the center of the stage. Sienna gracefully climbed the steps, grabbing the sleek microphone. She looked like an absolute angel. She looked invincible. I rested my finger heavily on the enter key of my laptop, staring down at her. Have you ever held the power to completely destroy someone's life with a single keystroke? She tapped the microphone twice, and the room fell into absolute silence. Welcome, everyone, to the dawn of a new era in wellness. Sienna's voice echoed through the massive speakers, smooth and impossibly confident. Aura is more than a brand. It is a piece of my soul. I have poured my own blood, sweat, and endless sleepless nights into designing every single detail you see here tonight. She paused for dramatic effect, flashing a flawless, humble smile. Slide, please, she commanded, not looking back at the tech booth. I pressed the enter key, but I didn't trigger her sleek, minimalist title slide. The 30-foot LED screen behind her flashed a blinding, jarring white, illuminating the entire warehouse. A collective gasp rippled through the well-dressed audience. Projected in massive, high-definition text was the fake $50,000 invoice she had submitted to Julian, completely unredacted. Next to it was the wire transfer confirmation routing the money to her cousin's LLC. Slight technical difficulty, Sienna chuckled nervously, turning around to look at the screen. The color instantly drained from her face, leaving her looking like a terrified ghost. Chloe, turn it off, she hissed into the microphone, the sound carrying through the entire warehouse. I pressed the spacebar. The slide advanced. Now the screen displayed my original, raw Adobe Illustrator files. The huge display clearly highlighted the embedded creation dates from 2021, entirely exposing my unaltered watermarks that she had clumsily cropped out. A giant red circle highlighted the metadata. Click. The next slide appeared. It was a massive screenshot of the document containing her vicious reference check notes, where she systematically destroyed my job prospects. Click. The final slide. An enormous, undeniable screenshot of her email to Julian. I actually built the website myself over the weekend. Below it, my frantic text message to her. I'm really struggling with rent this month. Can we talk about an advance? The devastating truth hung suspended over the crowd in glowing, unforgiving pixels. The silence in the warehouse was suddenly shattered by a single voice. What the hell is this? Julian's voice boomed from the front row, shattering the agonizing silence. He stepped forward, his face pale and contorted with absolute fury. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was staring dead at Sienna. Panic completely hijacked Sienna's features. Her meticulously crafted mask of the zen, elegant girl boss violently ripped apart in real time. Julian, it's a hack. It's a disgruntled employee. She shrieked into the microphone, the feedback whining sharply through the speakers. Chloe, turn the screen off right now, or I will have you arrested. She was hyperventilating, pointing a trembling finger up at the tech booth. I stepped out from the shadows of the booth and walked to the edge of the balcony, looking down at the chaos I had just unleashed. I'm not disgruntled, Sienna. I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm just finally sharing the credit you promised me. The crowd erupted into chaotic, frantic whispers. Influencers lowered their recording phones, looking absolutely horrified. The major retail buyers Julian had brought were already quietly backing away toward the exit doors, eager to distance themselves from the radioactive scandal. Julian stormed up the stage steps, entirely ignoring Sienna's frantic attempts to grab his arm. He ripped the microphone out of her hand. Is this true? He demanded, pointing at the massive projection of the fake invoice still hovering behind them. Did you funnel my operational capital to your cousin while stealing this woman's intellectual property? Julian, please, I can explain. She's crazy. She's obsessed with me. Sienna sobbed hysterically, her designer mascara running down her face in ugly, black streaks. But the evidence was glowing 20 feet high. The exact dates, the exact dollar amounts, the exact malicious lies. There was no spinning this. The magnetic, beautiful parasite was finally exposed under the harsh, blinding lights, with nowhere left to hide. Julian dropped the microphone on the stage and walked out the door. The fallout was swift, brutal, and utterly devastating. By Monday morning, Julian and his entire investment firm had officially pulled out of Aura, taking their millions in funding with them. He slapped Sienna with a massive civil lawsuit for gross financial fraud and breach of contract. The luxury lifestyle brand she had sacrificed my sanity to build completely dissolved into dust before it even launched. Our mutual friend group fractured violently. Sienna tried to spin a desperate narrative that I had fabricated the documents out of pure jealousy, but Marcus had been standing in the front row. He saw the raw files. He took screenshots. He corroborated everything I said, and slowly, the true friends rallied around me, completely cutting Sienna off. The sycophants who only liked her for the VIP access vanished overnight. She lost her luxury penthouse. She lost her carefully curated reputation. She lost her entire glittering, manufactured world. As for me, the immediate aftermath was incredibly painful. Vengeance is a fire that burns the person holding the match, too. I was still broke, I was still getting evicted, and my mom was still recovering in a rehab facility. But I wasn't paralyzed by fear anymore. With the help of Marcus, I found a pro bono intellectual property lawyer who was practically salivating over the undeniable paper trail I had meticulously gathered. We immediately sent Sienna a terrifyingly comprehensive demand letter, threatening to join Julian's lawsuit if she didn't instantly surrender the $25,000 she had stolen, plus damages. Desperate to avoid criminal charges for the wire fraud regarding her cousin, her parents stepped in and quietly settled with me out of court. I finally got my money back. I finally got my power back. I packed up my boxes, paid my mom's medical bills, and moved into a new, sunny apartment across the city. But the deepest wounds don't heal with a simple change of scenery. It has been 2 years since the launch party that ended it all. I never spoke to Sienna again after the settlement was signed. I heard through the distant grapevine that she moved back to her small, quiet hometown in the Midwest, working a standard retail job, entirely stripped of her glamorous, high-society facade. I don't wish her harm anymore, but I don't wish her well, either. She is just a stranger I used to know. Rebuilding my life took intense therapy and a lot of brutal self-reflection. I had to forgive myself for ignoring the red flags for 10 years. I had to unpack why I felt so deeply unworthy of the spotlight that I willingly handed my entire identity over to a narcissist who fed on my insecurity. I learned that true friendship is never transactional. It shouldn't feel like a grueling audition where you are constantly trying to prove your value. If someone only loves you for what you can endlessly produce for them, they don't love you at all. They only love the convenient, silent comfort of your sacrifice. Today, I run my own highly successful boutique design agency. My name is on the door, and my original watermarks are proudly displayed on every single piece of art I create. My mother fully recovered from her stroke, and she comes to visit me in my beautiful, bright, spacious apartment every single month. Just yesterday, I was sitting at my desk, drinking coffee, and looking out at the city skyline. I felt a profound, unshakable sense of peace. I built this life with my own 2 hands, and nobody will ever take credit for it again. If you are watching this, and you are exhausted from carrying the weight of a friendship where you do all the giving and they do all the taking, hear me now. Stop holding their coat. Walk away, protect your energy, and start building your own empire. You might just be amazed at how brightly you can actually shine.